All right. Looks like we're live. You got that first slide ready to go there, Jerry?
Pulling it up now.
Sweet. Perfect. All right. Well, let's go ahead and kick things off. Welcome to another fantastic Ekahau webinar with your friends Joel and Jerry from Ekahau. My name's Joel. I am the technical training manager here at Ekahau. With me today is Jerry Ola, who is our product manager at Ekahau. And Jerry's got a pretty nice little presentation for us today. Jerry's going to talk about the art of good Wi-Fi design. Hey, Jerry, how's it going?
Fantastic, Joel. Yeah, looking forward to this discussion around Wi-Fi design and the art behind it. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive right into the short slide deck that we got here, and then we'll spend the majority of the time demoing, how to, the art behind the Wi-Fi design, right? So yeah, the agenda for today is, kind of identifying the who, what, where of Wi-Fi design, and the who being the clients that are going to be using the network, the what being the usage requirements, what they're going to be doing with the network. The where is going to be, how many devices, where are the devices going to be in the environment, where are they going to be accessing the Wi-Fi. And then we'll spend the bulk of our time, I think, in the demoing, kind of, showing how this all comes together. Sound like a plan?
Yeah, that sounds great. And also just maybe a couple of kind of housekeeping items to sneak in here at the end of the agenda is, first off, we have, if you look in Zoom, there is a chat tool there. And so if you would like to chat with both us and the other attendees, you can use the chat function to do that. So by default, I think it's just going to send to all panelists. And so that's just Jerry and I. So what you might want to do is switch that to all panelists and all attendees. And so you guys can actually have some discussion in the chat while we do our presenting thing. If you have any questions for us specifically, if you have a question for Jerry, or if you have a question for myself, then we encourage you to use the Q&A tool. If you look on Zoom, kind of down the bottom of the main Zoom window there, you should see the Q&A button. And the cool thing about that, Jerry, I don't know if we have this enabled. We should probably double check, but you can also upvote other people's questions in there. Good to go? We got it? All right, cool.
Yeah, give those questions a thumbs up if you want to see those questions answered live. We'll try to get through as many of them as we can, but yeah, always helps us to see if there's a popular question that multiple people wanted to ask or see a response to. So yeah, go ahead and submit those throughout, and we'll I think have a good amount of time during this session here at the end. We'll try and stick around as long as we can and answer as many of those questions as we can for you.
And one other thing too is that this session is being recorded. And so within about 24 hours after we're finished with this presentation, you will receive an email containing a link to where you can go watch this. I think it's just a YouTube link. And so keep an eye out for that in your email inbox if you have to drop out early, or if you want to check it out or reference something in this discussion after we're done here. So all right, Jerry, anything else before we should dive in here? Or do you think we're good to go?
I say we jump right into it.
All right.
All right. So the first thing we got to lay is, what we're not talking about here. Let's lay the groundwork. We're not talking about the point and hang and pray method and just kind of say, hey, put an AP there, put an AP in every room. These kind of common methods that we see. We also have seen this kind of referred to as the solo cup design method. So that's not what we're going to be talking about here today. We're going to be talking about the real art behind a good Wi-Fi design. You can absolutely use these types of methods, but what we tend to see happening, behind the scenes or post-install, I should say, is the aftermath, right? Where you've got to do a lot of remediation work. You've got to add access points, move add access points, and just the whole process of that, users complaining, right? So bad user experience. So the art behind good Wi-Fi is all about avoiding all those upfront mistakes and doing a proper design, right? So yeah, let's get into it. Let's first talk about the who. So the first thing we need to do is really get to know everything that we can about our clients. The important things like what do our clients eat? Do they have any limitations? Any allergies? What kind of music do they like to listen to? How old are they? Right, Joel? These are all the important things.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how you've kind of, I'm totally going to just lay it out here and say that Jerry totally put this one together. I love what you did here. Like, what do they like to eat? It's their phi type. Any food allergies? I have a food allergy, and so I can really relate to that one, referring to what band and channels are supported. I think that getting to know your clients is probably one of the most important steps in designing a good wireless network, because what is Wi-Fi all about, right? It's all about clients.
I think we can say, our 2.4 only gigahertz clients are 5 gigahertz intolerant. What do you think?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're 5 gigahertz intolerant clients.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some correlation there. I thought it would help to kind of connect the dots a little bit of what we're talking about here on why we need to understand what these Wi-Fi devices, and what their capabilities are. So hopefully that kind of helps to, frame what we're looking for here and why we need to identify these types of things, what their capabilities and limitations are. And we'll dive into this a little bit more here, but I thought that would be a good way to kind of segue into this and dive into this of what exactly we're looking for here. So the first thing, talking about the receive sensitivity of devices and determining what that is, it's a common inquiry we get is, okay, yeah, I understand different adapters. A phone has a different receive sensitivity than a laptop that has multiple antennas in it and larger antennas, something that has one spatial stream versus 2 spatial streams. It all impacts, how it, the number of ears that it has and how well it hears things. So yeah, the size of the ear, the type of the ear, the number of ears that it has is what we're kind of talking about here about receive sensitivity. There's actually a really good website that was put up recently by Blake Crone. If you don't follow him, definitely hit him up on Twitter. He's done some awesome work on this website here, rssicompared.com. And actually, there's a nice, kind of little sneak preview here that I'll give you. See if I can switch over to it here without breaking anything. And I've got the tab pulled up here in my browser, and you can see, there's this new page that he's working on that he hasn't announced yet. But just talking with him yesterday, found out about this and thought it was pretty awesome and good timing for the webinar. And what we're going to be talking about is he's had the RSSI Compared website up for a while. If you're not familiar with that, just to go to the homepage here, and you've got your device data sets here, and we can look at on a per device level of kind of what its receive sensitivity is. But we need to correlate that information to something. And he's done a great job now with this new landing page with the with the Ekahau and comparing that to the Sidekick. And the Sidekick, the nice part about that is it gives us a good baseline to start with, because it has very consistent measurements from one Sidekick to another, where if you're taking something like off-the-shelf adapter and you're using that as your kind of target, or you're trying to hit your target using that, you're using a moving target, right? Because one adapter, something like that off the shelf is not going to be tuned to the next adapter, right? So you could have a variation, as much as 6 dBs is not uncommon from one USB adapter to another, where the Echo Sidekick gives us a nice standardized measurement. What does it have to do with the art of design?
Jerry, I'm gonna let you finish, but actually we have a question here from David that I was hoping you could answer. David asks, can you please define Sidekick?
That is a great question. Yeah, we're kind of jumping down the rabbit hole probably a little fast. I appreciate.
We get excited.
David. We do. So the Echo Sidekick, since I've got my video going here and I just happen to have a Sidekick sitting right next to me here, is this device here that we're talking about. So get it the right direction here. This is the Echo Sidekick. This is an all-in-one measurement device. So not to get too salesy and plugging things and stuff like that. We want to talk about the design, but this is a design tool as well, right? So This is an RF measurement tool. It has multiple Wi-Fi radios in here. It has a spectrum analyzer built into it, so it's a great tool for both design, validation, troubleshooting of Wi-Fi networks. This is an Ekahau product. If you're not familiar with it, check out sidekick.ekahau.com. Is a great landing page to talk all about what this device is and what it does. It's built by Ekahau, works specifically with our Ekahau Site Survey platform software. Works on both Mac and PC. But yeah, what we're talking about here is using this device to gauge what our devices' capabilities are based on their receive sensitivity. And now that we have this kind of solid target there of the Sidekick, we can use that as our baseline, is kind of what we're all trying to connect here full circle. So what we're looking at here in this database is being able to see, okay, here's the a collection of Sidekick measurements that we've, and you can see there's a total of 51 Sidekicks now that we've captured what their capabilities are, and there's, about plus minus 1 dB difference between these Sidekicks is what we found, and now we can use that as our baseline to compare, okay, what are our devices' capabilities? And then what we can do is see, okay, this device has much less receive sensitivity than our Sidekick, and we can factor that into our designs and into our validations, knowing that we need to offset by a certain dB value and kind of use that as our baseline. So hopefully, I know we jumped in pretty quickly down the rabbit hole early in this webinar. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody in that, but I definitely recommend checking out the rssicompared.com website. Also checking out the devices that Blake's, this is not all of Blake's work here as far as the devices on there. This is all user submitted. So you can go on here, you can create an account if you've got a device that's not on here, or if you do have a device that's on here, we're looking for more data sets. That's the, kind of the goal behind this, is get as many sets of data as we can so we can start to understand these devices' characteristics and be able to design and account for that accordingly in our designs.
So Jerry, let me make sure that I just kind of have this straight here. Based on what you're saying, it seems like every Wi-Fi adapter out there perceives signal strength differently. Like, for example, my Nokia Android phone here might perceive signal strength. I got to reach over here and grab them. Might perceive signal strength differently than my iPad Pro would. And so what we're talking about here is understanding how my Nokia is probably actually going to have worse receive sensitivity than my iPad will, which will probably, both of these will have worse receive sensitivity than the Sidekick. And so what we're looking to do here is we're looking to understand, okay, well, what level of signal strength do we need to design our network for based on the clients that are using it? Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. And actually, I believe there's even now a comparison. I haven't tried this out yet myself. There's a comparison option where we can select 2 different devices and we can say, what is the offset between these 2 devices? So we could use the Sidekick, for example, as our kind of baseline, and then use a second device and see, okay, what's the difference between those? So for example, let's see if we can do this kind of live here. I've got an iPhone 7. You can see the device characteristics here of on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz of what these dB measurements are. And how we create these measurements, if you're not familiar with this kind of process, on rssicompared.com, you can actually go to the add data section here on the front page, and it gives you the whole, how to set up that testing environment. So there's certainly room for, things to, different test environments. You're going to have some variation in results, so it's not going to be an exact science. We're not using these RF chambers that are completely controlled environments, but it at least gives us with enough data a pretty good assessment of what these devices' capabilities are. So yeah, just to show you that real quick, let's take like an iPhone 7. We'll say compare this device, and now we can compare that against another device. So you can see here's the kind of summary of this device's capabilities on 2.4 and 5, and then we can add a second device to the mix to compare it against. So if we want to scroll through the list here, let's see, we've got
Pixel 2 seems like a good one.
I was gonna, yeah,
we
can do a Pixel 2, sure. Let's use that.
I didn't mean to derail you there.
No, I was gonna compare it to like a laptop, but yeah, we can do like more of a side-by-side kind of comparison of 2 different phones. You've got an Android phone and an iPhone, and this is the delta here between, just this device of these different measurements between the devices themselves. So you can see there's a fairly wide range of measurements there of just one iPhone 7 to another, but then the, a side-by-side comparison of something like a Pixel 2. So here's our Pixel 2, here's our iPhone 7. That was 2.4. Here's 5 gigahertz, and you can see in 5 gigahertz, there's even a larger delta in these measurements on one device to the other, and actually less of a delta between 5 gigahertz on the same device. So yeah, not to go too much into that, I didn't want to dive too far down that rabbit hole, but it seems like there's definitely some interest in that topic, and I think it is a very valuable topic when it comes to Wi-Fi design, right? And especially the art behind it and really understanding the client. So I think that's a really important thing to be able to really understand the receive sensitivity of these devices and how that needs to be potentially taken into account. If you have a very critical device, a barcode scanner or something like that in the environment, it's going to be very important to understand, what the ears are on that device. So now on some other capabilities of the device besides the listening capabilities of the device is what other kind of capabilities or limitations does the device have? The next kind of tool in my toolbox that I use for this would be clients.michaelbano.com. As far as I'm aware, this is the best online database that exists out there of client device capabilities. Again, it's not an exact science. This is using the association frame of the device using a packet capture or performing a packet capture, capturing the association frame. And what this information is the information that the client device tells the access point when it associates to it and advertises to the AP, telling the AP, hey, these are what my capabilities are, or kind of, these are my capabilities as well as my limitations. This is how you can basically talk to me. And that's how they kind of set up that exchange of information so the AP knows how to properly talk to the client, what data rates it's going to be able to support, number of spatial streams it's going to be able to support, what is the way that this device is going to be able to be, talked to, what channels it supports.
I think I have sorry, Jerry, I thought you were pausing for a second. I think I have a kind of a real world example I can apply here. In fact, I was chatting you last night as I was working on this network. There's a small network that I manage. It's only about 20 access points. But I designed this network about 2 years ago. And when I designed the network, most of the client devices on the network, a lot of guest Wi-Fi coming through here. So it's kind of it's a totally mixed bag of what kinds of devices would come through. I saw a lot of devices that would not support channels 100 through 144. Those were just channels that you typically, those devices that were coming in and using this network did not support those channels. And so when I designed the network, I did not use those channels. We just left those channels off the table entirely. Well, last night, I took another look at the clients that were on this network, and I've been watching the network and watching what people are using on it for the past few weeks. And I determined, we're seeing all iPhone 8s and iPhone 8s and iPhone 10s and things like that on the network now. And so I went ahead and opened up all of these channels that were previously unsupported by a lot of those devices that were coming through to just go ahead and take advantage of that additional space. And so, it's just kind of an example of how things have shifted over time, where a couple of years ago, we saw a lot of devices that didn't support a lot of channels, but now we're seeing more and more devices that do. Looks like you're working on something here, Jerry, to show here.
I was there used to be a search function on here, and I don't know if Mike changed it or if I'm missing something.
You have to hover your mouse in the I think it's the upper right-hand corner of the table. It's not very robust. Oh, no, that's right. That if that little button in the upper right-hand corner just opens up the Google Sheet. I like to do that. I just open up the actual spreadsheet like you had just done there. Sorry.
Yeah, but the nice thing is this is a nice database table of all this information. You can sort by different things. Yeah, there used to be a nice way of kind of filtering this down if you wanted to just look for, all the iPhones, for example, right? We can scroll to that for now, but yeah, this is, you've got all your iPhones listed here. You can see all their capabilities. You can see, iPhone 5S, for example, doesn't support this channel here, which is probably 144.
Yeah.
An older phone. So yeah, if you have that and that's a critical device in your network, you're going to know from a design perspective, from a channel planning perspective, that's something that you're going to need to take into consideration. If we identified that as a critical device and we need to ensure that that device works everywhere on the network, without issue, that's going to be an important consideration there.
So Jerry David has another excellent question. He says, what about designing for a dynamic environment, e.g. a guest network in which we have no control over what endpoint devices are used?
Yeah, and that's a common situation, right? Your BYOD, public spaces, things like that. Everybody's going to be bringing everything. There's certain considerations there. If there is a device out of that mix that is super critical that needs to work, then obviously that's what I'm going to design to. I'm not going to worry so much about all the rest of the devices. As long as I know these critical devices are going to work, that's where my focus is going to be. If it's that we just need to make this work with everything, and that's going to be a common thing, unfortunately, is we just want everything to work. Well, it doesn't give us a whole lot to work off of, because it puts a lot of constraints. If we really care about making everything work on the network everywhere, then it actually creates a bottleneck of the channels that we can use. Because if we're talking about needing to support devices that are 8 to 10 years old, that might be a 2.4 only device. That might be it doesn't support Uni 2 extended channels. It creates a lot of constraints. If we can say, okay, we'll support any device that's this age or newer, then at least that gives us some baseline to start with. And it's like, all right, sorry, your device doesn't work, but unfortunately this network is a newer network. It's optimized for these newer devices, and until you upgrade your device, it's not going to work on this network. It's kind of one of those things where if really we want every device to work on there, all of the devices are going to suffer, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we have to make every device that's 10 years old or newer compatible with this network and be able to connect to the network, yeah, we can make that work, but it's going to be at the cost of a lot of other things for performance of those newer devices. Those newer devices are going to have to essentially slow down to be able to work properly, potentially.
Jerry, can you just one more time explain where people can find this database?
Yeah, so this is clients.mikealbano.com. I'll go ahead and throw a link to this in the chat.
Clients.mikealbano.com. There we go. Jerry just linked it in the chat.
I'll go ahead and put the other links in there too. I don't know if you shared those already, Joel.
I have not. Actually, okay. I did the RSI compare. It's been a while ago, so I'd definitely throw it in there one more time. It'd be a good idea for sure.
Sounds good. I will copy that in there as well, just so we've got them all. And then the next one that we're going to talk about here, again, this is I know this is more of a Wi-Fi newbies kind of targeted webinar, and we're going down the rabbit hole, so I apologize for that, but I think these are important topics just to
we can't help ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to not go down the rabbit hole with me, so apologies for that, but I do think this is important. So the last one that I'm going to hit on is just quickly, this is another great this is a Python script, so this is a real geeky one, but there is a fairly simple platform to take advantage of this. Check out wlandpy.com for this. This is a little pet project of mine where you can build a little Linux computer, run this kind of Python Linux script on there that Wi-Fi Nigel has created. And this will pull in a lot of those same capabilities that we were just looking at on the clients.mikealbano.com. So I've got a little screenshot of what that looks like. And it's capturing that association frame. So it uses a Wi-Fi adapter and in this Python script to listen for those association frames, strips out all the relevant information about the client capabilities, and you can see that client capability report there of what is being reported. Things like number of spatial streams, so we can see in this report, it's advertising this device is 802.11n compatible. It supports up to 2 spatial streams. It didn't report things on like, does it support 802.11k or R, so we don't know. A lot of devices unfortunately don't advertise that. So that's something you may have to test separately if that's important. But yeah, one of the important things is max transmit power. That's an important one to understand of what the device's max transmit power, especially when you're talking mobile devices. Mobile devices, it can be kind of all over the map of what their max transmit power capabilities are. What we've actually been seeing is newer mobile devices have less max transmit power capabilities. What's your thoughts on that one, Joel? Why would a newer phone have less capability from a max transmit power?
If I had to take a guess, my guess is battery life. I think that as we're shoving more RAM and processing power and things like that, and more cores into our mobile devices, I think manufacturers are looking for places to make things more power efficient, and that's my guess anyway. What do you think? Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think yeah, power, heat, all that kind of stuff play into it. But yeah,
Heat, yeah.
battery life. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. That's my assumptions as well as why we're seeing them slowly kind of turning the power down. And I think also Wi-Fi networks, in some sense, have gotten better. They're denser with APs, so we don't need as much transmit power out of our devices. So we can kind of take advantage of that. Even in home environments, we have mesh deployments and things like that. So for even these consumer devices that are primarily used in like a home environment, they don't need to be able to talk to an AP on the other side of the house anymore. You may have these kind of mesh deployments to be able to take advantage of that. And then also, on top of it, the more APs, the better our design is. The closer we can get these APs to the client, the less they do need to talk as far as their volume goes, right? The transmit power, they can talk quieter, use less power, get better battery life out of these mobile devices. So if these mobile devices are really critical in your environment and battery consumption is a concern, a better design network like that, of placing those APs close to the clients, can actually help improve client battery life. And also another thing on the this Python script here, just like the clients.mikealbano website, is it will report at least what the client advertises to the AP of what its channels, its supported channels are. So you can use that in your channel planning. So again, if you have a really critical device, this can be a really nice thing to have in the field. So you could grab a couple of devices that are critical that we need to make work, create their device, grab this kind of device capabilities report, and now I can use that in my design to make sure that we're using the right channels, using the right transmit powers, those kinds of things in our design. And we'll get into that more here as we demo the tool itself and how to factor all this into your design. All right. What do you think, Joel? Did we lose anybody there? Everybody staying with us?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, there's still some, we've got some good discussion in the chat and things. So I think we're doing okay. I think we're all right for now. So
Awesome.
what do you think?
Well,
Time to transition. Oh no, wait, hang on. No, you keep doing your thing. I was jumping the gun there. Carry on.
yeah, that was just the who. We only got through the first point there. So yeah, let's talk about the what. So the what is what are the users going to be using the Wi-Fi for? And again, you're going to have these BYOD environments that you need to support, and you don't know exactly what the users are going to be using it for. But we've got a lot of common things these days. Is this your basic Wi-Fi network, and all you care about, as long as they can access their email and pull up websites, that equals a good network, right, or a good user experience. But a lot of users are doing more than that with the Wi-Fi these days, right? We've got a lot of video streaming services. You've got a lot of HD video type things with YouTube and Netflix and video conferencing. Just like this call, this webinar that we're doing here today is a great example of does the Wi-Fi support this type of traffic, this type of load on the network, to be able to support real-time audio and video from multiple streams simultaneously.
And my home Wi-Fi, where my office is, does not support that yet. I had to run an Ethernet cable up here. Don't worry, I'm going to fix it soon. There'll be an AP on the ceiling right there before too long.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I do the same thing. When I jump on these things, I don't want to rely on Wi-Fi, and even if I'm in the office or working from home or whatever, somebody might start streaming a YouTube video while I'm trying to do a video conferencing call, and if I just have one AP that's doing all that, and I've got multiple clients on there, it might start to break up the audio, and you might start to lose some of that real-time capability pretty quickly if you don't have a robust deployment that's designed for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, real-time applications is a big factor, and I would say recently has become a big piece of Wi-Fi deployments, right? Wi-Fi wasn't built for real-time applications, when it was first created. So it's really something that we've had to adapt Wi-Fi technology, the devices, the applications, and things like that to withstand the latency that is created with Wi-Fi, with management overhead, and the back-off timers for contention with multiple devices accessing the Wi-Fi. Also, yeah, just moving a lot of large files, right? I've done work in designing things for a medical center, and there might be areas of the medical center that need to move a lot of large files, any kind of diagnostic imagery where they're doing, high resolution x-ray files, and they've got a portable x-ray unit that they're moving around the hospital, and this thing needs to be able to move these files, quickly. Time is of the essence in those kinds of environments. So need to be able to have additional bandwidth available for those types of applications. All right, so now we get into the where. So this is an often kind of overlooked thing as well, where we ask, okay, where do you need Wi-Fi, or maybe we don't ask it, but if we're designing this network, and we need to define some things about not only where do we need Wi-Fi, but potentially where do you not need Wi-Fi, and almost more importantly nowadays might be that that question is are there places that we don't need Wi-Fi? Things like mechanical spaces, outdoor. Do we need coverage? In outdoor areas as well. So yeah, that can be a huge impact on the overall design if we need to make sure that we need Wi-Fi in things like stairwells, elevator shafts. Almost all of those kind of areas are going to need their own access points. So that can be a huge increase in cost of the entire project from a cabling standpoint as well as a mounting standpoint, and just additional access points to cover those types of areas. So to say we need wall-to-wall coverage, and you've got a bunch of elevators and stairs in between that, plus you've got outdoor meeting spaces, outdoor eating areas that you want covered. Those all need to be factored into the design and can have a big impact on the overall design. And then you get into the number of devices I say devices / users, because often we don't always know, the number of devices, but we can at least see, this area of the building we know has a certain capacity rating. It can, we can't exceed this many people in that area, and we can use that as a factor, right? So we can say, all right, we know we can have 50 users or 50 people, let's say, in this room, in this meeting room. It can hold up to 50 people. Well, we can use that as kind of our baseline. So even if it is a BYOD environment, we can kind of plan for worst case scenarios and know, hey, the maximum amount of people that we could fit into this space of this building or this outdoor area is about 100 people or 1,000 people. And then we can use that to add things like a multiplier to that of number of devices. So especially if we're trying to, kind of use future proofing in quotes here, but, try to plan ahead is the goal there. We don't want to just design the network for today's needs as we see Wi-Fi devices ever increasing, IoT, wearables, all these things that are Wi-Fi connected. We might need to account for 2 to 3 devices per user in that space. And then the last piece is, where are these users? Is it evenly across the entire floor plan? Or, if you got a 10-story building, is it even amounts of users per floor? Or do we have certain floors or certain areas of certain floors that we have higher or lower density? For example, a mechanical space, we probably aren't going to have 50 users, using Wi-Fi in that space, but we might have a few IoT sensors in there. We may need to be able to make sure a tablet's going to work in there to access support tickets and different things, in different parts of buildings. But yeah, elevator shafts are a big one I've found, especially working in the more medical centers, medical space. Elevator shafts are becoming more and more important to have Wi-Fi coverage in there to be able to support things like voice over Wi-Fi calls while you're being transported between floors. What do you think, Joel? Do we hit everything? Anything I missed?
No, I think you got everything. Is it demo time?
See, I think that is next. Let's do a design.
Right. Sweet. Yeah. Well, I'm going to steal the screen from you here, and let's jump into Ekahau and let's do a little Wi-Fi design here using Ekahau Site Survey. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's bring in our map, and then we can define requirements based on our clients and what they need. And we'll also need to figure out, what kind of clients we are on this network and what they're going to be doing and all that. So we'll just kind of design it as we go here. So let's bring in a map first thing. I'm just going to add a map file here, and I'm just going to use a little shortcut. I'm going to bring in a CAD file just to kind of speed this up a little bit. We can have Ekahau draw the walls in automatically, which will just kind of save us a little bit of time on the webinar here. So we'll open that up. And this particular CAD file has a couple of different layout views. It's kind of got this print view. I'm going to switch over to this model view, which just gets rid of all the extra print stuff. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that real quick here. And then I'm just going to go through and tell Ekahau what all the different layers of this CAD file represent as far as materials go in the building. So for example, the doorways, we'll say that those are all solid wood doors. For the elevator shaft, we'll do a 30 dB elevator shaft. For the exterior walls, this one's not super important, but we'll do a brick wall around the perimeter of the building here. And then for the stairways, let's do like a 5 dB cinder block wall. So 5 dB is basically how much loss there is when RF or radio frequency passes through that wall. For the interior walls, let's do a 3 dB dry wall. So just a nice little dry wall there. And then we'll hit import, and Ekahau is going to go through and draw in all those walls for us. Now, if you don't have a CAD file, don't worry. You can manually draw in these walls on a flat image file like a JPEG or a PNG or a PDF. It sounds way worse than it is. To be honest, I kind of enjoy that kind of work sometimes. I save it for the end of the day when I'm, tired of answering emails and doing problem solving. It's kind of nice just to doodle on a floor plan for a while, and so that's how I look at it. All right, Jerry. So based on all the stuff that we talked about today, what do you think we should do next here? Should we go ahead and define where we want our network to be?
Well, if we look at the slides that we covered here, we started off talking about the who, right? So who are the clients that we're designing this network for? So let's go in order like that, and maybe input those values right away and figure out who they are. Things like, what are their PHY types? What bands and channels are they going to support? What are their max transmit power, receive sensitivity, number of spatial streams? We talked about all that.
Yeah.
Where could we input that information into our plan?
Yeah. So let's start by plugging in what kinds of devices they are. And so I'm going to go into the device profiles list here, and we can just plug those devices in here. Now, there are some generic ones that are kind of built in here, but I want to be really specific about this. I want to get really, into the nitty gritty of the specifics here. So I don't know, what's a client device that we might see on this network, which I might point out is a college dormitory. What's a client device that we might see here on this network?
I say let's go to the audience here, since I'm not super proficient in the EDU space. What's maybe a lesser capable kind of device that you guys are seeing? Anybody working in the EDU space that you're seeing as maybe a typical kind of problem client? All
consoles,
iPhones, yeah. Game consoles, I feel like, are pretty unique to the space. Yeah, Xbox. Yeah, a lot of Apple hardware.
And yeah, game console is a good one because I actually happen to know. Let me grab something real quick. So sitting just behind me here, I have my Nintendo Switch sitting here, and I happen to know about some limitations of this client device, and I think that this is probably a pretty typical device in a dormitory. Don't you think, Jerry?
I think you could probably find a couple of those.
Probably just a couple. And so what I'm thinking here is, so let's just plug in the Nintendo Switch really quick. I'm going to name it Nintendo Switch, and we'll plug some other ones in here as well. I do know that this is an 802.11ac client. It does support 802.11ac. And I know that it supports 80 megahertz channels, and I believe it's 2 spatial streams, if I remember correctly. Pretty sure we checked.
According to clients.michaelbano.com, it is a 2 spatial stream device.
2 spatial stream device. So there we go. We have just plugged in the capabilities of this device, and there's another limitation that we will get to in a few minutes that I'll point out. But what's another client device that we should, another specific client that we should add?
Yeah, a couple of people mentioned a Chromebook. Chromecast would be all right too, but let's talk about a Chromebook, because I think that's more in the classroom side. I guess in dorms and things like that as well. But let's talk about a Chromebook, because I do think there's some depending on the Chromebook, could be some limitations. But yeah, we've got a couple of Chromebooks here. I'm looking at the clients.michaelbano website here, and we do have a couple of different Chromebooks. And let me pick one. It looks like all of them are 2 spatial streams. Let's go with the Chromebook Acer C7.
C7. We had a C720 a couple of years ago. My wife had it. She loved it. It's a great little Chromebook. What are the specs on that one?
So that is an 802.11n device.
Okay.
2 spatial stream.
Okay. And it's dual band, right? So it does both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Pretty sure it does.
That's one thing that is not listed on here. So yeah, that can be a tricky one when you see something listed as 802.11n. That does not delineate if it's 2.4 only or dual band. N could
So
be either or.
you want to see my trick is 802.11 B, G, and N. Those are all 2.4 gigahertz standards with the exception of 802.11n, which is 2.4 or 5 gigahertz.
Yeah.
But if you look for 802.11a or 802.11ac, those are 5 gigahertz only standards. And so if you see something that says BGN, the likelihood is that's going to be 2.4 only, right?
Yep.
But if you see something that says ABGN, then that's probably going to be dual band because there's that 802.11a in there, which is the giveaway. So that's kind of how I handle that. So what do you think, Jerry? What's the judgment call on this one?
Well, we know this would be dual band then, in my opinion, because it does so that it supports certain 5 gigahertz channels. That's what everything on the clients.michaelbano website to keep in mind is this is all focused around 5 gigahertz. So if it's on here, then that means it does support 5 gigahertz. So since it's listed as an 802.11n device, we know it supports 5 gigahertz. So I think we're pretty safe to say that it is a dual band
Cool.
device. Yeah.
Sounds good. Any other clients that we should add to this network?
Let's go with those two for now. We can always look at tweaking that later on if we find another device to consider in our planning.
Sounds good. We'll just kind of keep it simple. So we've got our switch and our Chromebook C7 there. Great. So what's the next thing that we need to define on this design?
Well, going off of our slide deck here, what we talked about was after we've defined the kind of device capabilities, we go into the what section here, which is, what are the applications those devices are going to be using.
Yeah.
So creating some type of usage profile for these devices. So we may want to set up, we could either use one of the predefined usage profiles, or we could create our own usage profile that we can apply to this design.
So I'm going to go to project and go to usage profiles here. And I don't know, it seems to me like just kind of putting together a general profile for the Chromebooks. What are people going to be using the Chromebooks for? Now, of course, we could select from one of the predetermined ones here, like, just maybe we want to give them each 4 megabits per second. Or we could even get really granular here and define what individual applications they're going to be using. Which way do you think we should go on this?
I think we turn to the audience again. They've helped us out so far with finding some devices. What are the, any common usage scenarios that you're finding in the education space, thinking of either dorms or classrooms? What are the typical kind of applications, especially ones that are critical applications to make sure it's going to work in that kind of space?
Yeah. What are you guys seeing for like bandwidth requirements? YouTube. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so I'm just going to be like some guy using his laptop is what I'm going to call it here. And let's just add some applications. Do we have YouTube specifically in here, or do we just have, we have, yep. So let's say 1080p YouTube. What else? Some Netflix. While it is probably unlikely that someone's going to be streaming YouTube and Netflix at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and throw them both in here just to kind of, give this a little bit of meat, right? Zoom from Jim, like we are right now. I actually don't know what the bandwidth requirements of Zoom are. I have no idea. Another one that I'm seeing from Eric is FaceTime. That's a good one. So let's do like a Wi-Fi calling or something like that. I think that'll probably kind of help that one. Yeah, Skype, Google Chat, Messenger. So let's just do 2.7 megabits of Wi-Fi calling. And so we have now defined 12.7 megabits per second. And I'm just going to rename. We'll give this a more serious name: laptop usage. So I think that's a pretty good one. And let's do a gaming one as well. I'm just going to take a stab at this and guess that a gaming console, I don't actually know, and it probably depends on the game pretty significantly. But I'm going to guess that they're probably going to need around 4 megabits per second for a decent gaming experience. It probably depends on things, but we'll just do that. So, all right, cool. So what's the next thing that we need to define, Jerry?
All right, so we've defined our usage profile. So now the next step is going to be, where are these clients going to be? Where do we need Wi-Fi? Where are these clients going to be using the Wi-Fi? What is the quantity of devices in these areas? This is where we really start to tie everything together, all the work that we've done so far.
Cool. So what I'm going to use here is I'm going to use the area tool, and I'm just going to define basically where we have where we want the network to be. And also kind of where we don't want the network to be. Now, if I was doing a real design, like you notice all these little alcoves and things like this around the perimeter of the building, I would take my time and I would fill those all in. However, for what we're doing today, just for an example, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of mark off the major area here with this area tool. So when I get to the last one here, we'll double click. And there we go. Now we have the complete area. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to right click on this area and I'm going to tell Ekahau what is in this area by hitting edit area. And so now I'll just give it a friendly name. We'll call it like general coverage area. And for our devices, let's do, I don't know how many, for a dorm room or dorm building of this size, how many Nintendo Switches do you think we'll have in here? I'm thinking what? Maybe somebody.
I don't know. You're the gamer. You know, how popular are those Nintendo Switches?
I don't know. I mean, I'm college is a long time ago, man.
One college student or what?
Back when I was in college, it was original Xboxes with 10100 Ethernet ports, and so I don't even know. I don't know. I'm saying let's say 20 switches or something like that in this building. I'm just going to throw a number out there. So let's start there. Ooh, not 200, 20 of those. And then we'll use our gaming profile that we put together. And then I'm going to say, let's do a lot more. Let's probably do like 100 laptops. Do you think it's too much? What do you think?
Laptops? Yeah, I think in this space, we've got 15,000 square feet that we're covering. It looks like on the top there. I think that's probably a pretty safe bet.
Okay, so there we go. We've got our 20 laptops, our 100 laptops and our 20 Nintendo Switches, and we're looking for a total bit rate of 1,300 megabits per second, 1,350. So quite a bit here. So what do you think, Jerry? Anything else we need to define before we start doing our design here?
It looks like we're seeing a lot of PS4s and Xboxes. I don't know if we need to add a few of those to the mix.
Sure. So let's do 10. I'm going to actually just do that from here. We'll do, I'll add another profile here and we'll do Xbox One, all caps, whoops. So Xbox One, and I'm just going to take a guess at what it's capable of. I hope it's an 802.11 AC device. Ooh, it better be.
It is not.
Are you serious?
Xbox One is listed on clients.michaelbano as an N device. Spatial Stream N, 802.11 or 2.4 and 5.
Wow. Okay, so the Xbox Ones, and what was the other console that we had?
A PS4.
So we'll do PlayStation 4. And do you have the stats on that guy?
I am not seeing a PS4 on the database here.
Dang, we might have to buy one so that we can submit it to the. Wow, for work, obviously. All right, so I'm just going to take a guess that it's also 802.11n and also 2x2. So we'll just take a stab at that one, and so we'll do let's do 10 PS4s, let's do 10 Xbox Ones, and I'm going to give them each 4 megabits per second. So we are now up to 1,500 megabits per second backhaul that we're going to need for this network here. So I think it's time to go ahead and start designing this thing. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think we kind of talk about maybe the different methods of coverage-based design versus factoring in all of this, and maybe do a comparison real quick of that. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, so I was just going to show, if you flip over to like the signal strength planning mode, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, the coverage planning mode.
Help me out here.
So under signal strength, there's coverage planning. So go back to the visualization, the new coverage planning mode.
Sorry, it's a new feature. I forgot about it.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't think of the name of it. But yeah, in the coverage planning mode, it allows you to quickly visualize signal strength. But I just wanted to highlight the difference between this, because this is, in the past, the way we would do things. We would just paint the map green with signal strength, and all we cared about is just making sure we had good signal everywhere, right? But now we're factoring in, how does that account for all the criteria that we just input into this project, right? The number of devices, the location of those. So yeah, we could just paint the map green with signal and make sure we have good coverage everywhere. And we're setting a boundary of this kind of cell coverage to make sure we have good signal everywhere is what Joel's doing. And how many APs did that come up with to cover this map based on
13. That's 13 APs.
Okay, so now let's keep that in mind, and now let's go over to the auto planner side of it and show how the auto planner can factor in all these other criteria, all these other components that we've talked about here, and even some additional ones on the device capability. So one of the things is we've been talking about the clients. We haven't even really talked about the APs at all, right? Which
No.
is, I think, kind of interesting, worth pointing out is through all of this, we've mentioned nothing about the access points. And I think that's important, and that's kind of intentional, we'll say by design, if you will,
Ooh.
because often we come at this thinking about the AP first and foremost. What AP am I going to use for this design before we consider any of these other things that we've been talking about this entire webinar, right? Now we get to the point of, okay, we've input all this information about our clients, where the clients are, all these kind of things. Now is when we should start thinking about what is the AP that we're going to deploy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of different models to choose from out there. Of course, here's our little sales pitch once again. Is we got just a handful of these in Ekahau. There's just a couple APs in here, as you can see, just a few. But it really depends on, well, let's talk about like physical mounting, for example. Do you want APs that are going to be mounted on the ceiling? Are you looking for something that's going to be a wall mounted AP that has a gigabit switch built in so that maybe students can connect directly with Ethernet? That's going to dictate a lot about, which APs you're going to choose in this process. And the other aspect that I'm always thinking about too is what are the capabilities of the access point? Do we want to go with kind of a lower cost 2x2 access point? Do we want to go with, an enterprise grade 3x3, 3 spatial stream access point, or beyond now that we're starting to see 4x4 access points out there?
Yeah, real quick on that one. If we know all the devices that we've talked about so far and we factored into our plan, we know our 2x2, right? They're two spatial stream clients. So do we need a 3x3 AP? Oh, we got some 3x3 laptops.
Yeah, it's my mistake. I forgot to plug in the Chromebook, and I had 50 Xbox Ones, as somebody pointed out, so we fixed that as well.
Nice. Appreciate it. The audience is always keeping
They're helping us out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we've got a bunch of 2x2 clients. Do we need 3x3 APs? Is there a benefit to 3x3 APs? What do you think about that, Joel?
No, I don't think so, because we're not going to see faster data rates because we have basically a mismatch of client capabilities and AP capabilities. And so now if we throw a bunch of MacBook Pros in here, that's when we might start thinking about moving to 3x3 APs because the MacBook Pro has a 3x3 chipset. Or maybe we decide that that they're the minority. There's only a handful of MacBook Pros in here, so it's not worth spending the extra money to get those 3x3 APs.
So one thing I would say on the 3x3 side of it is think of the spatial stream. I see you nodding. You know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going.
More ears, right? So even though if we have a 3x3 AP, there is still benefits to having a 3 spatial stream access point, even if our clients are only 2x2, because there's more ears on the AP side to hear. So the AP would have better receive sensitivity than the clients, in better antennas, more spatial streams, it can hear better, right? So even if our clients can't transmit as loud and can't talk as loud, it can still improve the overall connection, right?
So if you take a 2x2 client, but you have 3x3 APs, you're not going to see a higher, data rate, right? You're not going to see 450 megabits per second. But what's happening behind the scenes is less retries because your APs are going to be able to just hear those clients better and more reliably. So there's a lot of trade-offs here, aren't there?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So awesome. Let's go ahead and push on ahead here. So using the auto planner, I'm going to select the Aruba 225. That's what we did our original, coverage based design with here. So I'm just going to pick an AP. There's lots of great APs out there, lots of great vendors. I'm just going to pick one. And we can go through and tell, we can tell the software, well, what are the ceiling heights? So let's say if these are all 10-foot ceilings in here. We can set things like minimum data rate. We can also select which channels we do and do not want to use. Now, here's where the client capabilities thing comes in again, is the Nintendo Switch, I happen to know because of clients.mikealbano.com, it does not support channels 136, 140, and 144. So we're going to take those off the table, and we're just not going to use those Wi-Fi channels. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the Create Plan button here, and let's see what Ekahau does when it creates this design based on capacity instead of the capacity of what we need to support in this network versus just coverage. And so there we go. Let's take a look at our normal signal strength here to see how we did from a signal strength standpoint. One thing that I'm noticing here is, where did the auto planner put the APs? Where did it put those from what you're seeing there, Jerry?
Not in the hallways for
What?
one.
Why didn't you put it in the hallways? That's where the cabling's easy, and you put them all down the hallways. They look nice. Why?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Because the auto planner, is not optimized for cable pulls, we'll say, but it's optimized for RF. It's optimized for trying to put the APs where it feels is going to be the most optimal for channel separation, as well as SNR to put the APs closer to the client. So it'll utilize some of the technology in the auto planner to identify what it feels are the most optimal locations. It's not going to do a picture perfect job, and it's not going to know all the restrictions in the environment. I know somebody in chat earlier mentioned, in their environment, there's restrictions where they can't put an AP in the stairwell because they can't put cabling into the stairwell because of fire codes. So we can't put the AP, like in this case, it put an AP inside the stairwell I see in the middle of the map there. We're going to have to move that AP, right? We can't physically install that AP there. So what happens if we move that AP out of that? And yeah, actually now Joel wanted to talk about what you're doing there.
Yeah. So earlier we defined where the network is going to be. Another thing, what I'm doing is I'm defining exclusion areas here. This is telling Ekahau where APs are not going to be, and so I'm just going through and marking off all the stairwells here, and that's just going to tell Ekahau, hey, don't put APs here, and also don't worry about providing Wi-Fi here because these areas are out of scope for the network. And so what we could do is we could grab that AP and we could move it out, maybe just like out into the lobby, for example. But what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it the lazy way. I'm just going to run the auto planner again. So we've defined our new areas, and so this is going to change. Oh, hey, why didn't it move it?
Oh, you did channel planner.
Oh, I did the channel planner. Duh. Okay, let's run the auto planner again. So channel planner, that's nice. It does our channels for us, but we're going to do a complete redesign here at the auto planner. And there we go. Notice that now it has moved. It moved that AP out of that stairwell and understands it can't place an AP there.
Yeah. Shifted around quite a few APs, it looks like too, but still a good design based on those parameters, or gets us pretty close, right? There might be a few things we need to manually shift around, so it's not going to do a picture perfect job. But let's check out AP quantities real quick. Is it the same as what we did with our coverage based kind of tool, or do we have a different quantity of APs?
It's different. So last time we had 13 access points. Now we're looking at 18. And so Ekahau took a look at our capacity requirements based on all the clients, all their capabilities, and what applications they need to run. And it has determined that we need more access points to provide more more capacity for the network than we originally designed.
Yeah. So taking all those extra requirements in consideration besides just coverage, does make a big impact as kind of the end kind of result here is what we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, Jerry, we have somehow managed to burn up an hour. Should we go ahead and move through some questions and try to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I am honestly shocked that it took as long as it did to cover all that, but there was some great dialogue and questions and stuff from the attendees. So I'm hoping that even though we went over a bit here, it was well worth the time. But Joel, you're up for sticking around and answering some of these questions here that we have not got to yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only thing I'm missing right now is a one-on-one with my boss. That's no big deal. So yeah, we can do this. I think this sounds like more fun. So don't tell him I said that.
We should get him on here.
Yeah, we should actually. In fact, he might be in the audience. Hopefully he is. So
there you go. Well, then he should be all right. I think as long as he's on the webinar, you got an excuse.
Yeah, let's hope so.
It's being recorded, so you can always show him the recording that you were busy.
Oh, he's there. Yep, he's
awesome.
Totally there. Yeah.
Nice.
Good guy, cool. Jan. I'm here. All right. He says better end on time. All right. So cool. Let's go ahead and take some questions here. So top question that's been upvoted here is from Eric. Eric has a question that I think is a very good question to ask is, what do we mean by channels? Jared, you want to speak to that a little bit? What do we mean by channels?
Yeah, great question. So, hopefully we may have addressed that throughout, but just in case we didn't, channels, we've got channels on both 2.4 and on 5 gigahertz, and channels relate to frequencies. Wi-Fi operates in both the 2.4 gigahertz band as well as the 5 gigahertz band. And within those bands, we have different channels. And only one Wi-Fi device. We've had webinars on this before, but it's an important topic. Only one Wi-Fi device can ever be talking on a channel at a given time. So we have multiple channels to provide some separation there, right? So Joel's got the channels kind of pulled up. Actually, Joel, why don't you pull up the RTFM view, the real-time frequency monitor
Oh,
view,
yeah, sure
and
thing.
give us a little better visual of these channels that we're referring to here. So at the bottom, you can see, yeah, in the window here, we've got channels 1 through 11. This is on the 2.4 side. This is a live view of Joel's environment. You can see there's some energy being picked up in there on different channels with the spectrum analyzer is connected. But the important thing that I wanted to show was the Wi-Fi radios here. There we go. Now we got a nice clear view. And these on the 2.4 side, we've got 11 channels, but our access points operate in 20 megahertz channel width, which one channel is 20 megahertz wide. You can see the center frequency is where that channel ends up lying. There's a center frequency of that, and it's 10 megahertz to the left, 10 megahertz to the right. That's our 20 megahertz wide channel. Also on 5 gigahertz, 20 megahertz wide channels. However, we have much more frequency there, and the channel kind of distribution there is laid out differently. So what you're going to notice, actually, once you zoom in on that section there,
Yeah, sure.
the Uni 3 band.
And I apologize, I don't have many APs here to really demonstrate with, but this will get better. Just give me a few weeks.
Nice. So yeah, here we can see there's some better channel separation is what we call it, where still 20 megahertz wide. So from the center frequency, we have 10 megahertz on each side of that. But there's more separation between the channels. So you can see the numbers there, the 149, 153, 157, and so on. Those are each individual Wi-Fi channels. That's how much spectrum that we have available for these Wi-Fi devices to talk in. And it's important to factor that into our design of making sure everything's not talking on the same channel, or, you could have neighboring APs that are using those channels. We want to try and separate those things out as much as possible. Not that you can't have 2 access points on the same channel, but by doing so creates contention, reduces throughput, the performance, the Wi-Fi is slowed down because they have to contend for that airtime. They have to share that channel.
And just to kind of put it in perspective, in 5 gigahertz, we have 25 channels to work with. In 2.4, we have 3. So this little box that I've drawn right there, that's how big 2.4 gigahertz is in comparison to the entire 5 gigahertz band. So 5 gigahertz is just massive. There's a lot more channels for a lot more capacity for a lot more.
More. I've never seen that put into that kind of perspective. That's an interesting way of looking at comparing 2.4 to 5 gigahertz.
Yeah, I can't remember who I saw do that first. So Marty has a good question that's kind of related. Can you talk about the downside of having all channels available?
Downside of all channels available. So I'm thinking that has to do with maybe some of the device capabilities that we talked about. And let's say we have all channels available in our network. You may not need to use all of them. Let's say you have 10 access points. As Joel just mentioned, we've got 25 channels in the 5 gigahertz band. If you only have 10 access points and they're using one channel each, you could bond channels together, but we won't get into that. But let's say we're just using one channel per access point, 120 megahertz wide channel. If we have all channels available for that access point to use, it could potentially choose a channel that is not, and we're using an automatic channel configuration, it could potentially choose a channel that is not capable of our clients. What ends up happening in that situation is if I'm the client device and you're talking on a channel that I don't support, I'm oblivious to that. I have no visibility as a client to see that. It's a black hole to me. I don't know, I wouldn't even know there's an access point in that area of the building, for example.
Cool. I think we probably have time for 2 more questions before we wrap it up. Bob has an interesting question that I asked you yesterday, actually, Jerry. Bob says, can you get the channel info? This was asked back when we were talking about device client capabilities. Bob says, can you get this channel info from new devices by using your Sidekick? Sounds like a feature request to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So as we mentioned before, it requires that receiving that association frame, and the challenge with that is that means that you need to have a radio, essentially an access point that's advertising a network for a client to connect to, so that the client will send that association frame. Unfortunately, the Sidekick, the way the Sidekick is designed and built is it's a listen-only device. It's a measurement device, so it's not able to create that connection between the Sidekick and the client. The Sidekick could potentially hear those association frames as that client was maybe trying to connect to another nearby access point, but that functionality doesn't exist today. But yeah, I agree. That would be a great feature for the Sidekick to be able to do.
Yeah, sounds like something for us to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and take one more question here. Let me just look and see. We've got several that are kind of they're in a tie for popularity here. I don't know, Jerry. Do you see anything there that you think what should we pick for the last question here?
Get those votes in quick.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any jump out? Okay, so Eric asked around explaining the offset. So when we create those device profiles, we input an offset for 2.4 and an offset for 5 gigahertz, right? You want to pull that up one more time real quick, Joel?
Yeah.
So yeah, when we create these device profiles, you can see the generic ones have some predefined offsets for 2.4 and 5, but you may have a situation, actually, just like we looked at on the RSSI compared with the example that we looked at, where the 2.4 when we compared the two phones, if you remember back to the beginning of the webinar, when we looked at the iPhone 7 and the Pixel 2, there was a much bigger delta between the 2.4 radios on those two devices than there was from the 5 gigahertz. So you may find that certain devices may have less receive sensitivity on one band or the other, and now we can offset those on a per band basis.
Yeah, so basically the idea here is the Sidekick has exceptionally good receive sensitivity, and so we talked about the design aspect today, but if you're talking about surveying a network, one thing that you can do is you can compare your Sidekicks. I'm not going to try to bring the Sidekick over here. It'll just make a mess, but you can compare your Sidekick receive sensitivity to your client device receive sensitivity, and then you can offset all of your measured results to match what the device's receive sensitivity is. And so my Nokia 6.1 happens to see about 8 dB quieter than my Sidekick does. And so this feature is intended for you to be able to just go in there and compare those two. I usually stand about 30 feet away from an access point, and I'll just look at what does my phone say signal strength is, what does the Sidekick say signal strength is, and there we go. There's my offset. So that's kind of more on the survey and measurement side of things. So.
Hey, Joel, just saw a question. Since you got your Sidekick connected, Johnny asked if the Sidekick can also measure SNR. You want to just pull up the RTFM view and show the noise measurement, and then absolutely on the map we'll correlate that together into an SNR view. But yeah, you can view signal and you can view noise based on the Sidekick's measurements on those channels. So any channels that are have an AP that is transmitting on there, we can do a noise calculation on that channel and see what the noise value is there.
So there we go. So the adapter is seeing both signal strength from an access point, like this guy on channel 11 is. I want to say that's around negative 61 dBm, something like that. And so, yeah, the wireless adapter on channel 11 is calculating a noise of negative 90 dB on that channel. So, yep, Sidekick can absolutely show SNR. My favorite way to look at this is to look at the density view on the spectrum analyzer and look and see where the background noise is. And I'm seeing that it's around neg 91. It's pretty much on par with what the Wi-Fi adapter is seeing. It's nice to get a couple of, in the Sidekick alone, you get not only the view of the spectrum analyzer on board, but you also get the view of those Wi-Fi adapters combined into one. It's pretty cool to be able to have all that in one box.
Yep. Last question, Joel. I think since you're on here and you're a training manager, I think we got to address this one. Joseph asked a great question on, does Ekahau have training videos on how to fully use the software? And a second part of the question was also, do you offer higher education pricing? I'll answer the second one. I'll let you answer the first one. But the second one is, yes, we do have some education discounts. So fill out the form on how to buy, and you can put in a comment there about what's the education discount, and one of our reps can let you know what that pricing looks like.
Yeah, and as for training goes, there's several ways that you can get more training on our product. First, I'll talk about from free to, I don't know, kind of going up in price, or in my opinion, also going up in value. So first off, you can go to ekahau.com and click on training. Of course, you can view these webinars. These are all posted. I've had a couple questions about whether this will be posted or not. Keep an eye on your inbox. Within 24 hours, you should receive a link to this webinar on YouTube. But you can go check out all of our previously recorded webinars. We also have standalone training videos. Keep an eye out for some updates to those in the coming months. The next way that you can get trained is we do offer a quick start training where you get one of our sales engineers for 3 hours on a Zoom call similar to this. Excellent way to get up to speed in the software very quickly. And the final way, I think my favorite way for you to get training on Ekahau is to take our ECSE. That's our Ekahau Certified Survey Engineer course. That is a 3-day boot camp with one of our ECSE instructors. They are an excellent team. All of them are very dynamic speakers. They're all incredibly knowledgeable on Wi-Fi. And what I love about the ECSE is it's not so much of a here's how to click on stuff in Ekahau. It's more of a here's how to design great Wi-Fi class, and learning how to use Ekahau is a byproduct of that, which I think is a perfect scenario. And so I can't recommend the ECSE enough. Let's see, Timothy says the ECSE's class is very good. Most of his team has attended it. Peter says the ECSE was awesome. Jan, my boss, correct me, says it's a 4-day instructor-led class, not 3 days. So, but it felt like 3 days because it flew by when I took it. I guess there's my excuse. But excellent class. I cannot recommend it enough. So there you go. There's my sales pitch.
All right. Well, I know we've already
10 minutes over.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up here. I appreciate everybody sticking around as long as you guys have, and all the input throughout the webinar and the chat and in the questions. If we missed your question, I know there's several we still haven't answered. If you do want to get that answered, hit up me or Joe. Our emails are up on the screen, but also there's some links on there. If you want to check out the product, get a fully functional eval license, fill out the request an eval form there. And then, if you need some information on pricing, education discounts, all that kind of stuff, head over to the how to buy link there, and you'll be able to fill out a form for that.
All right, perfect. Thank you, everyone. You're an excellent audience. Great discussion, great questions. We enjoyed this so much, and we are really looking forward to seeing you on the next Ekahau webinar. See you next time.